On this episode of the Serial Progress Seeker podcast, I got to talk with Ben about how people are creating and selling digital templates on Etsy and making an absolute killing doing it. Listen in as we talk about the pure insanity of this growing marketplace and how you can get in on the action. Let's dive in. Let's do it. Hey, what's going on, buddy? Always good to see your face, my friend. It's fun to be able to kind of get the jam with you. And man, today we're kind of jamming on something really cool and very interesting. And I think this is a space, I'll tell you right now, that I feel completely lost in. So it's been really cool to kind of learn about some of this stuff. And I'm excited to talk to you about how people are going out and making a shit ton of money selling digital templates on Etsy. Why don't you, let's just start right from the very beginning. Talk about, just your kind of background with Etsy and tell me a little bit about your experience and specifically how you've seen it grow into the monster it's become over the last several years.
It's funny, man. My first experience with Etsy was a couple years ago. I bought a Switch for the kiddo. So I bought a Nintendo Switch for the kiddo, and they had, like the little controllers that slide on and off.
Yeah.
And one day I'm on Facebook and I see this, and I'm a huge nerd. For anybody that doesn't know this, like the levels of my nerddom are really pathetic. I was in a Facebook group that was very Nintendo themed, and somebody was showing off like these custom controllers that they have. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Where'd you get that? And they were like, oh, I bought it off Etsy. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about Etsy for that. So I go over to Etsy and I find these controllers that are like the old school first Nintendo controller. Like they're themed like that.
I mean, they never got any better. I mean, come on, those are the best controllers there are.
That is the pinnacle of controller civilization for me, and I'm sure everybody else would disagree with us on that. But no, I'm still there. So I order these and I get them in after like a month or something. There was no fun Amazon shipping. That's like not the vibe of Etsy at the time because it's very handmade. Everything was handmade, and so. Like, that's where I started with Etsy. It was like this really cool, I got these cool little controllers that were custom made that no one else in the world would have paid what I paid for this. But like, I was like, yes, I am that nerd. So that was my introduction with the Etsy. And then, I don't know, something interesting happened. I started like kind of talking around to certain people, like my wife, especially. My wife has one of those crickets. I don't know if you vibe with that, or you know what those are. But
I don't know if I even know what that is. What is that? What's a cricket?
So a cricket is like this specialized printer kind of thing. I don't know if you'd call it a printer, but like what it does is you put in like certain kinds of pieces of paper or like paper that you can turn into stickers, things like that. And what it will do, it will like actually cut out the styles in this. And so like you see like very crafty. It's so like in the craft world, which I've learned, and I'm going to misspeak, and one of our listeners who's really into cricket is going to like be like, you messed it up, but that's okay. The point is like I started realizing she wasn't just getting patterns from like the traditional places, which cricket has its own little marketplace. Some of these things were starting to pop up on Etsy and in ways that you could use them, and so I was like, oh, so Etsy is like not only a physical place you can buy stuff, you can buy digital. So that, so that was sort of the progression there. And then we, in our business, you guys, if you don't know this, you're about to really, if you're not using this, you're about to just have a world of fun. In our business, we use this app called Canva all the time. Like before it was Photoshop and that was a mess. And then like along comes Canva. And for those of you that don't know the Canva story, go dig into Canva's story and like how they came about. They started off as like a yearbook app, like to sort of arrange things for yearbooks, and they evolved into this graphic design thing. But almost everything that we do these days comes from Canva, and we will hire designers to come in and build us templates, all kinds of stuff. One of our core products is us selling Canva templates to people for social media. And it's called Carbon Copy. So like, we got into this and like, not only were we using Canva, not only were we, getting templates, we were like selling templates and stuff like that too. And then you kind of get into this mode where you start, you can't find what you need in Canva. They have a ton of templates built in, but like, you're like, I wonder if anybody has this. And so it's like this community is like popped up around where people like have templates that they sell or templates that they'll give out. And so what we kind of discovered like through literal Google searches, man, was I was searching and I was like, oh, cool, this person has this template that I'm looking for like an ebook or this person has this template for like a social media graphic. And then I click through, and I'm starting to find all the time that I'm going to Etsy stores. And
Who'd have thought it, right?
I know, right? So, like, top of Google for what I'm searching for is Canva templates, but I'm going to Etsy all the time. And so I start looking, and I'm like, oh, there's this interesting market of people that are on Etsy selling straight digital. Like, there's no physical product; it's straight digital. And at first, you're like, the first ones that you find, you're like, okay, cool. This person sold a few of these here and there, nice. And they're making a few bucks. Because like I said, this is going to be anywhere that I spend, I'm spending anywhere from like $5 to like $25 on a template, but that template saves me hours of time. So I'm like, I'm in, like,
right,
awesome.
Right.
But then you start really digging deeper into it, and you realize if you're like, just go through and you search the pure volume of things that's actually on this network that people are actually building. And so, and then I'll let you, I kind of hear your thoughts on this. I started to realize that it wasn't just, what I do in my world with the digital products, the social media, the things like that. I started realizing that it like kind of spanned back to another world that I come from, which is medical. I started finding that people were selling like forms, like intake forms that had been formatted and looked really, really nice that you
Genius.
could build. Yeah, and I was just like, I bet people are killing it. I still, at this point, have no clue, how big it is. And then I start doing some searches, and I realize, oh, this person here has made 300,000 sales of a digital template. Now, I look at their sales, right? So it was sales. They have like 80 products in their store that are all digital. They've made 300,000 sales. And then it hits me. I'm like, they're not charging $1 per template. This person literally has $1 million business that is, time invested to build these templates, but pretty much profit because there's no shipping. And this person has made over $1 million selling digital. And then you start picking them out. They're all over the place. And so, yeah, man. That's the thing is you start digging into Etsy and you realize, oh my God, like this is a marketplace with built-in traffic where people have these digital things. And if you find someone that's doing something cool, and this is the thing that I always look for, if you find somebody that's doing something cool, odds are you're going to dig into the other stuff that they're doing. And so you're probably going to walk out of there with 2 or 3 products that someone built if you like their work. And I'm like, this is Etsy. Got it. Like now I understand, sort of the power. So,
yeah, it's like, it's kind of like you stepped into this magical world that you didn't know existed, right? That's the way I feel about it. And you guys are going to have to stick with me for a minute because and you especially because my Etsy ignorance knows no bounds. So I'm going to sound pretty dumb when I talk about this stuff, but I literally thought it was just an online store for crafts and people that are like putting things together, in their basement and stuff like that. I had no idea that it expanded to the digital space. Of course it does. It makes perfect sense that it does. And you and I were talking off air a little bit. I told like my wife who is, and I feel like you're probably the same way. My wife is by far the craftier person in this relationship, and way more talented from an artistic standpoint. But she is pretty familiar with Etsy, and I was telling her we were going to talk about this on a upcoming podcast, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I used Etsy templates when we were planning our wedding," and I'm like, "You did?
Right.
I had no idea. I had no idea." So this world is out there. There are probably a lot of people listening to this that are going, "Oh yeah, duh, no kidding that this is going on." But man, when you start to think about it to the scale that you were just talking about, that people are developing these, they've got a product store with 80 plus products that are sitting there and are available. Holy cow! I wonder how many of those kinds of people there are out there, and how much more room do you think in the marketplace is there for more? I don't know.
Well, and this is what I think is interesting. I think that you always look with things like this. What I'm always looking for is how mature is this market, right? Like how mature is this marketplace that they put together? And so there are a lot of people listening right now that I guarantee are like, oh, you guys didn't know about, what Etsy was doing and all that, and that we were doing digital. And okay, well, that's cool. I think there's probably a lot of people that have bought something off of Etsy, but I think there's a lot of people that don't really utilize it for what it is in terms of, being a producer.
Right.
And, I think that's where you start really opening up is like, I don't know that many people who haven't heard of Etsy at this point. Etsy, I think, started off primarily aimed at a female audience.
Sure.
And so, like, I don't know many females that have planned weddings and males that have planned weddings at this point. I have guys that I know that have, planning their weddings at this point, and Etsy played a part in it. Exactly in the way that you said. It was a table topper. It was something that it was a groom's gift, something that came into that piece. It was a bridesmaid's gift that came into that piece. And so all these templates are there. But then, you look up and you realize, okay, well, all right, we start off with this primarily female audience. That's where they were targeted first. Extremely functional through, and I don't know if they aimed at females initially. I think it was just some of the people that were selling things. That was a great place to find this stuff, and that was aimed at a female audience. But now, from a position of where you're going with this, you are going to expand into worlds that I think, especially with the digital, that Etsy was never initially intended for. We get into the digital, but we start pulling in more males. Like, if I'm just now getting onto it the way that I'm getting on, and you're just now getting onto it, that means that there's a huge amount from the male population that's on their way there, but also from the female population that is going to be like, oh, interesting. I didn't even think about that you can do that. I started polling the staff, over the last few days, and we have, you wouldn't even know this, but we have people on our team that have Etsy stores and have for a while. And I think that's the thing, is like, even though they have grown and grown and grown and grown, I think that this marketplace has the potential to grow even more. And so what I really think is interesting from an opportunity standpoint is if you were to position yourself with some sort of templates that you could go out there, even if it's like we're doing with Canva, and you guys, Canva is like $10 a month for a pro account?
Yeah.
Something like that, like nothing. And anything that you can create, you can literally go up into the top little exports area and click down into more, and you can get a template link. And so anything that you create in Canva, whether you're a teacher, whether you do stuff for weddings, maybe for your own, but anything that you create, even for yourself, now has the potential to turn into something that somebody else would want. And so if you go to like Etsy right now and you were to search Canva templates, and obviously we want to put something before that to be more specific, but if you just search Canva template right now, you're going to see this wall of things that just will blow you away, because it's like, okay, these are all these people selling these templates. And if that market is big now, what I predict is coming in the next year is you're going to have a huge market. Now, what that means is there's going to be more money for everybody that has something there that's quality. And so, I think that that's what's so exciting for me, is I'm like, I've been selling templates for years. Like, that's one of our core things, one of our core money makers at Serial Progress Seeker is we sell templates to marketers who are trying to do certain things, whether it be social media templates, web page templates, things like that. We sell templates, and we've never sold them on Etsy. And the other side to it that I want to get into is because we're list builders. The other side that I want to get into here in a couple of minutes, and I don't want to forget about this, is even if you sell your stuff off of Etsy, how can you use Etsy to grow your business even more? Even if you don't want that to be your primary store, your primary place of commerce, how can you use Etsy too? And so I definitely think we should get into that before it's all said and done.
No, absolutely. I think that's a huge piece. And you've touched on a couple of things here that I think it'd be cool to kind of dig in on your brain a little bit about some different things. You talked about that you've kind of picked up a lot of skills over the years from Canva and using some of those tools. So say I'm listening to this right now and I'm telling you, I'm asking this question because I am this person. I'm raising my hand right now. I do not consider myself a creative person, someone who is skilled in any sort of way in like graphic design, anything like that. What would it take for me to pick up a couple tools, and specifically the ones you're talking about, Canva, jumping on producing an Etsy store? What do you think it takes for someone to be able to just build a business like that straight up?
Well, if you already have some sort of like design skill, maybe you went to school for graphic design. Maybe it's just something that's built in that you don't even realize. Literally go set up a Canva account today. Like, you can go to canva.com, set up an account. And what's cool about Canva is the built-in templates. And so what I do a lot of times is, just for inspiration, I will use one of their built-in templates. And what happens with their built-in templates, Marshall, is like, everything is spaced correctly. And so when I'm looking at something, I'm like, why is that aesthetically pleasing to me? And it's because of the spacing and all that stuff. And so what I try to do is when I build something of my own, or I use one of their templates and then I sort of build things myself, but with the same spacing. So I'll use the same lettering, but more specific to a certain niche, like wedding planning or something like that.
Sure.
And then like what I get out of it is something that doesn't really look like the original template that I used, but it's something that is very much balanced correctly. It's designed the right, and I'm not a graphic designer by trade either. I've just done a ton of this stuff. But the idea is, I think that you could literally go out if you had a little bit of graphic design background, or just natural, or you went to school for it. You could just jump on a Canva right now. In the span of a couple of days, you could have a few templates that were aimed at a specific niche, like I said, wedding planning, or maybe you're looking at social media, and you could have a pack of 20 images that were specific for something that nobody else was doing. And I think that that's what I like strategy wise. That's what I'd look for. It'd be like, okay, who's the business out there that is sorely underserved? There's a lot of them, but they're sorely underserved in terms of like what's out there. Because what a lot of people do, they'll build like very general social media templates, but they won't actually like title them for like a certain niche. And so like how you can really start to gobble up that space on Google, set up a Canva account, build something, that is for a specific niche, put it on Etsy and say, and don't just say, hey, social media templates, but you literally go in and say, I'm doing this for car dealerships, social media Canva templates, or something like that. And that's the thing is, and so we always, back in the day, we always said, go for the long tail. And that's what that means. It's like, don't just take the core thing that you see everybody else doing, take it one step further and slap a niche on it, get more specific with it, and you're going to start hitting that search, because that's, as I said, I'm finding Google searches all the time that are sending me to these stores. And what happens is, too, once your store starts picking up steam in the Etsy marketplace, because maybe you did grab a search term that was great and people are buying from you, they're going to start showing you in more searches within their platform. And so I don't think I answered your question directly, but like the idea is, if you've got a little bit of graphic design, go for it. Just start. Canva is an easy way to build some things. You'd be surprised, how quickly you can do that. If you don't have any graphic design, I would say, number one, you can play and play and play and play, and that comes. It's just a matter of playing in there. But I would say the other thing is, find somebody that that is more of a graphic design type person, partner with them, and you run the business side, because most of my hardcore graphic design friends don't like running the business. Sure. And that's not across the board. I'm not trying to slap any graphic designer, because I actually do know a lot of graphic designers that are extremely business savvy, love all the blood and guts of the business side too. But a lot of my graphic design friends, they want to create, they want to build cool stuff, and they don't want to do the business part of it. And so partner with somebody. And literally you could be set up, you could start in 5 to 7 days from now, you could be sitting in a spot to where not only do you have a set of templates that is very niche that you could put together for something, but you could be up on Etsy, you could have a buy button up and you could sell it. And that's the thing is, how quickly can we go from nothing to buy button is always, sort of the measure of what we're doing. I mean, I really think the simplicity of what this is now, it's so easy to set up an Etsy store. It's so easy to build a template in something like Canva and go out there and sell it. And like I said, my big advice to, how do you actually, compete with the people that have been doing this for years? Just find that niche that's a little bit more specific than what most of these people are doing. And you can actually go to Etsy search. Like right now, you go to Etsy search and you could go in and you could be like, okay, well, social media templates, that's going to throw out a bunch of stuff. Social media Canva templates, that's going to be less, but it's going to be a lot still. But then you start typing in dental. You start typing in, and there's still going to be a lot, but you're shaving it down every time. And the more specific you get with, building out that long tail search inside of something like Etsy, it's big. Why I think this is a monster opportunity and something that, I'm definitely looking at with the stuff that we've already built is because I do think that like Etsy is in sort of the spot where a lot of people are starting to figure out, oh, this is my go-to for templates when I need something new. Yep. And as the market starts to do that, there's going to be podcasts that come out like this. There's going to be YouTube channels that come out like this that are talking about it. And so more people are going to start flocking to the platform, which means there's more business to be had. So, I mean, I think it's a literally 5 to 7 day from start to buy button if you go at it. That's how easy it is.
I mean, that's absolutely insane. There's how many things exist in the world that you could pick up and go like that. That's just awesome. And so you just touched on something, and I hope so much, and I know you do too, that we have folks in our audience that listen, that hear this and go, you know what? I'm going to go put this to work, because something you just talked about made me go, you know what? I literally just went through this process. You and I haven't even talked about this, but we have a mutual friend that is running for a public office in a small town that we're near, and she reached out to me just several weeks back, just asking some general marketing questions, just how do I get my name out there, stuff like that. So I picked up the ball a little bit. I went to Canva. I created a flyer. I created a social media piece. I basically put together a little digital package for her, right, and helped her so she could have some cards to pass out at local events, so she could put stuff on social media. And now I'm going, well, shit, why didn't I think of this? I could put together a political package for someone that they could have something ready to go. They just insert their information, and they've got these templates ready to go with all of these different elements on it. And I could put together and put that on an Etsy store. I could go do that right now from something that I've just done in the last couple of weeks. So that just goes to show you talking through that process makes perfect sense, because I mean, I think that there's so much possibility out there just like that.
Well, and you're right. Strategy wise, it is. It's like you go in, you're building something specifically. And I think it's a good point that you put together here. Most of the things that we created in our business that, are like best sellers now from a template perspective was just a friend asking us, hey, do you have this? Yeah. Do you guys do this? Or like I got into a phone call. I literally went out last night and was talking to a friend because they have a restaurant that they just purchased from someone else and they want to blow it up. And they're like, okay, what can we do marketing wise? And so like, that's the thing. I start thinking about, okay, what are the pieces of the puzzle that, you want to build in for something like this? You build it. But I think that's where we get stuck most of the time when we're doing marketing, especially when you're first starting or as an entrepreneur. You get into this trap of building something and getting paid for it for one person or one business or like one project. And, you want to talk about like where Serial Progress Seeker actually exploded. And I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but it never has really come up like this. We exploded because of like one simple strategy. Obviously, it was building a list. I'm just going to beat this into everybody's head as much as possible. But from a product standpoint, where I actually started in the digital space was doing work for individual businesses. And so like I didn't get into, this, digital world and thinking, oh, I'm going to do exactly what I do now. I was like, hey, this law firm is paying me $1,000 a month to do this one thing. Like that's where I started. And then like you get exhausted because by the end of the project, you've done all this work, you've got this money, and then you're like, oh, I got to go on to the next one if I'm going to do this. So what ended up happening though is I was like, what if I take the exact stuff that I built for them and I go sell it to a law firm that's not a competitor of theirs? And then you start realizing how many law firms are out there right now that fit into this. And so you start thinking, okay, I'm going to start making sure that everything I build is built for many instead of one. And that's where you really get into this template mode. And I think that's it. It's like from there, you're just like, okay, well, how do I get exposure? Am I going to go buy Facebook ads to get in front of all these people? And then you're like, oh, I just got to find a marketplace. I got to find a marketplace where the buyers are already there. I got to find a marketplace that maybe Google likes, so that Google's going to display this stuff when people search. And then you stumble onto something like Etsy. And honestly, how I actually got started in this one-to-many is I stumbled onto an internet forum like probably 12 years ago. I stumbled onto an internet forum that had a sales area. That was it. Like it was a forum that talked about marketing. I was doing marketing in my practice, and I noticed that there was this whole section of the forum that was about, hey, I'm selling this how-to guide. And so it's just a thread that told what they were selling. And then the thing that was powerful, though, is like there were so many people on this forum. We had a built-in marketplace. You didn't have to go anywhere else. I didn't have to advertise. All I had to do was put this thing up, and I think I paid $20 at the time for this thing to go live. And when I did that, there was traffic. I didn't have to look any further for that traffic. And so with Etsy, it's the same sort of thing. It's like you start seeing patterns over and over and over again. Etsy pops up as it's just a marketplace where the traffic is already there. And if you can provide something that is a little more unique, you're definitely going to stand out. And it's just like the opportunity is endless right now. And yeah, with the political stuff, that's genius. Because like right now, you could literally put a political pack up, and even and this is what's so great. We think about selling this to somebody that maybe doesn't have graphic design chops, but more often than not, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be somebody that has graphic design chops but doesn't want to spend the 4 hours to design it themselves. And so they're going to go pull a template to give them that platform that cuts 3-4 hours out, and where it's a 20-minute job. And so I think that that's what's so powerful is you've got tons of people out there right now, especially this time of year, that are like, "Ooh, time to get this together. I don't want to do this from scratch. What templates are available that I can just jump off of?" And there you go. I love that.
Well, talk a little bit about, because I think this is kind of where all of this is based from, and this is all coming from, but talk about being aware of your surroundings. So obviously we're sitting here in this room, we're having this conversation because we saw something that looked really cool. We see, obviously, there's a group of people that are out here doing this. They're absolutely killing it. And we feel like there's probably more room at the table, right? And that's all because we just saw something that looked cool around us. So in general, I mean, speaking generalities, how much does that pay into everything that you do from your standpoint in building your business?
Well, I think that it's always keeping your head clear enough to be aware of what's happening. I think so often we get caught up in our day-to-day so much that, you lose that situational awareness of what's happening around you and what opportunities are coming up. For instance, TikTok is one of my favorite things right now. And it's a huge opportunity, but it's not as much of an opportunity now as it was 6 months ago. And, one of the things that's really interesting is, I got into sort of a busy time where I was too focused on certain things, and I didn't allow that little bit of bandwidth to have my head about me. Back when I was in the chiropractic office, before I hired the person to come in and help me run it, I didn't have my head about me. The whole reason that my business exploded back when I first started this was literally I hired some help in my main thing just to free my head up enough. Another part of when my business exploded, Serial Progress Secret, is I was doing it all by myself at first. And so everything from like shooting the videos to writing the sales pages to doing support, all of it was me. And I remember, man, the first month that I hired someone to come in and just run their support desk, like just to answer tickets and, if somebody needed help, we shot up another 10K, like just profit with 10K was there. And all it was is exactly what you're talking about. I had more of my headspace free to see the opportunity that was out there. And I think sometimes when we have, our day jobs and whatever we're doing before we get into, kind of doing our own thing, it is extremely difficult to look up and see what's sitting right on the periphery that we can go jump and get. So I think that's incredibly important. That's such a good point, is you've got to make sure at all times, if you are kind of living that entrepreneurial lifestyle or you want to, that you keep at least a little bit of your brain free so that you can have some time to be like, okay, what am I going to go mess around with for the next hour that probably is going nowhere? And that is some of the most important time of my day, is when I am sitting around being like, okay, I saw this cool thing on TikTok today, or I saw this cool thing on YouTube, and I want to try it. It's probably going nowhere. It's probably going to be a dead end. But and 9 times out of 10, it is a dead end, by the way. And that's okay. But it's that one time that something blows up and it takes you down a path, and you're just like, yep, there it is. That's why I'm doing this. And so I 100% agree with you. Like, you have to have that awareness of, hey, there's opportunity out there if I'll just keep my head up.
Yeah, and that fits into everything that we talk about all the time, right? It fits into not only being aware of your surroundings, but being malleable, being able to be mobile at a moment's notice, and being able to pack up things and take off running with a laptop, with a cell phone, whatever it may be. And it's all about leaving that little bit of extra space so that you can be aware of your surroundings, but you can pack up and go. You can build from the comfort of wherever you are. If you're sitting in a coffee shop drinking a latte, you could be selling printables on Etsy. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
whole piece of what we're talking about. It's everything we talk about every single week. So I think it rounds up perfectly to everything you mentioned there.
Well, and I think this is, somebody listening to this is like, oh, that sounds good, but there's a ramp up and there's time. And I have to, this is where I get really passionate about try something. Because this is what happened. When I was in the chiropractic office, man, there was a period where I saw this marketplace that I was telling you about.
Yep.
And I was like, I know things. I could teach things. But I was like, I'm a chiropractor. I went to school for 8 years to be a chiropractor. Like this is not what I do. And I literally would go to sleep at night thinking about maybe I should put something up there and teach a little. Maybe I should teach some of the stuff this way. And this was 2 or 3 months that I literally was just like, maybe you should do this. And I think a lot of people never do it. But one day I just remember I was like, screw it. And I put in the work after hours. Like it wasn't like, I screw it. I clicked the button. I had to put in some work to get this thing ready to go. A lot more work than you would have to do if you started the Etsy thing right now, by the way. Like this, it's so much easier. But I just remember doing it. And I just remember like I pushed this thing live. And it feels like I can't remember the exact date, but it was sometime, the first time I did this on this forum was sometime around this year. I had gotten home from like a really long day and I pushed it live, and I just remember my phone started beeping. And I was like, what is happening? And I had forgotten that I had like connected my phone to my PayPal account. And what those beeps were sales. And they were coming in, and I was just like, what's happening here? And then, like an hour later, I had made $1,000 selling something digital. Like I was like, "What just happened?" And so, the reason I kind of tell that story is what ended up happening was I didn't think that this was my life, and then I just was like, I know stuff. I know just as much as these people because I'm actually doing it in my business, and so I started putting it up. And I walked out of that day with $1,000, and I remember just being like, that's crazy. And then so I had another thing I was going to teach. 7 days later, I did it. There was another $1,000. Now this is not life-changing money, but it was mind-changing money for me.
Yeah.
Because
you were unlocking. That's what you're doing. Yeah.
Something broke in my brain. And what I mean is like, imagine that you've got something right now that you're like, hey, I could go sell this on Etsy, or I have a friend that they should do this stuff. What you'll find out is it took me a year. It took me a year to understand that I was probably leaving my job as a chiropractor. All that work, it took me a year to figure that out. And what it really was is I finally said, what if we did this on a regular basis? And here's what's funny. People that bought something, that I released, today went back and found my other products. And they're like, I really like this guy's style. Let's buy this too. And so it's what I call the James Patterson model. Like just create, you get to the point where like, this is sort of what I do. And so you create, and so people go back and buy your other stuff too. And then, like I said, after a while, I looked up, and I remember and this is what can literally happen in this sort of environment, and this is why I'm telling this story. I got to the end of that year, that after I'd first started, I got to the end of that year, and I looked in this bank account because I didn't really touch any of the money that I'd made that year. I was just like, who knows if this is going to last? Let's just stick this back. I looked at this account. I had $50,000 sitting in an account.
Wow.
And I was like, what is this? Is this something that, real? And then, like I said, the next year is when everything exploded. Like that's when just the gloves, like everything was nuts the next year. But that's the thing that was really, really interesting to me is with this particular marketplace, you put one thing up and you start making a few sales. Okay, well, that's a few sales. But then you put something else up. Okay, there's a few sales there, but then you got more people over here. But if you're really smart, this is what you do. And this was the one thing that really changed my life. Everybody that goes through your sales process, everybody that buys one thing, even if your first thing only sold like 7, you only sold 7 copies of it, right? No matter what you do, have something embedded in that download where they can get something extra if they opt into the list. That's it. Like you want to be able to take everybody that's bought something from you and put them on a list, because the next time you put something out, rather than hoping they find it on the Etsy marketplace, what if you had a phone number? What if you had an email address that you could say, hey, you bought this last thing from me. I think you'll like this next thing that I did. And you can send it directly to their inbox and link them directly to your Etsy store. And that was the avalanche that actually happened to me. That's why I'm sitting here today, is because it wasn't just I put something on this really popular marketplace. I'd still be putting crap up on the marketplace, crossing my fingers if that was the case. And that marketplace isn't as popular as it used to be. So my business would have. But what happened is I kept siphoning customers out of the marketplace, putting them on my list so that I controlled. I remember the day when I said, we're not going to do anything else on this marketplace. I'm going to just do things on my own over here. But at that point I had probably 15, 20,000 people on a list that I could send it to, and they'd go wherever I asked them to go because they like my stuff. And so, just some strategy behind this. Maybe you're thinking about Etsy. Maybe you've been doing Etsy. The real trick behind this and where the real money is yes, build these templates, go for the long tail, build something specific, build something useful for people, put it up, make it digital so that it's all profit, minus your time. But have something built in that when anybody gets something from you, they have the opportunity to get on a list with you, an email, SMS list. And every single time you release something new, send something out to those people that are on the list. Be like, hey, remember me? Go check out this new thing that I've got. And what happens over the span of a year is you can get to a place where you've got 1,000 people that are on a list. And maybe those sales didn't come in all at once where you were like, oh my gosh, all this money that came in, but they came in over time. And what happens is you get this snowball effect. And you want to know how Serial Progress Seeker started before we got into all this fancy stuff. That was it. It was just literally everybody that bought something from us in this tiny little forum. I'm talking 100, 200 customers at a time would be on the list, and we just kept them. And I have people today, and Marshall, you've seen it. When we get on webinars, there are people that are there today hanging out with us, spending thousands of dollars a year with us that started off 10, 11 years ago with us. They bought a $9 PDF from us, and they're still customers. And so, from a strategy standpoint, anybody that's, looking at the Etsy stuff, yes, go test it out. You don't have to build a list at the beginning. Just go test it out. You don't need all those pieces to start. But as you start getting in there and you start making sales, think about that. Like, how do I make sure that I put these people on a list? And that's when it all sort of kind of comes together into an actual business.
Yeah, and creates just what you lined it up so perfectly. It's so poetic. It's literally, you put together these digital templates on Etsy, and they are your literal snowballs, right? And then you continually add things like building a list, and you're building that snowball until what happens, just what you said, that avalanche comes. And I think that's just so perfectly said, man. Very cool stuff. I've learned a ton in our time together today, just talking through that. And I literally see a business opportunity. Like, I'm going to get off of this. I'm going to go get to work on putting something on an Etsy store because I see an opportunity there. And I hope our audience feels the same exact way. And it's all about just being aware of our surroundings. This whole conversation came from that. That's good stuff, man.
No, and I think the only other thing I'll say is this is the only other thing that will hold you back from doing something like this is confidence. That was me the first year before I actually took the step. Confidence in that what you put up is going to do well. The part of the story I never tell people is what actually came before that first successful promo. There was actually one before it where I sold like 7 things. Didn't go as well. But I was like, let's keep going. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's actually ready for prime time. Okay? It doesn't matter if what you're doing is actually ready for prime time. If you think, because you're never going to think it's ready for prime time if you've never done this before. Put it up and let the market tell you.
Yep.
That's it. If somebody buys and they're not happy, they'll tell you, and you get to fix it for them. But you're interacting with someone. If they don't buy, well, you missed something. Go back to researching. Okay, what did I miss here? But the idea is there are so many people that are listening to this right now that literally are sitting on a gold mine that like they won't try because they're afraid of failure that first time. Put it out there. The worst that can happen is nobody sees it. The second worst thing that can happen is somebody sees it and they're not happy. You can fix those situations all day.
Yep.
But after that, there's not much else other than being out a little bit of time that is there. And what if this is your thing? What if a year from now, this is the thing that's making you $10,000 a month because people love your stuff? And that was my life. That was what actually happened to me while I was in the chiropractic clinic. You know, I looked up and realized I'm making way more money doing this than I am on this thing that I spent 8 years of my life to learn how to do. And, you know, everything changed from there. And so, like I said, huge opportunity. And exactly, man, just go get something up and see what happens. It's amazing with marketplaces like this, you know, what can happen really quickly. And, you know, and if you have that moment where you put something up and you make your first sale, everything changes. It does. When you hit that line, you're like, oh, okay, I just need more of this now. So I love it.
Man, that's great stuff. Good convo, man. I love it. Love being able to talk about this kind of stuff with you, and it's fun. We've got a lot more to talk about down the road for sure. Good stuff, dude.